Marcus Aurelius ran the most powerful empire on earth. He had legions, gold, and absolute authority over millions of lives. And every single morning, before he issued a single order, he sat alone and wrote about his own failures. Not his victories, his failures. That detail right there, that one habit, is what separates a man who built an empire from every other ambitious person who started with just as much fire and ended up with a pile of regret and a business that quietly died. You're about to start something. Maybe you already have. And I'm going to be honest with you in a way that most people in your life are too polite to be. The thing most likely to destroy your business isn't the market, isn't competition, isn't funding. It's you. The version of you that hasn't learned what Marcus spent a lifetime learning. These 9 Stoic lessons for entrepreneurs aren't philosophy for classrooms. They're field notes from a man who made hard decisions with real consequences every single day. A man who lost generals, watched plagues tear through his cities, dealt with betrayal from people he trusted, and still showed up. If you're building something, a company, a brand, a career, these lessons are the difference between a founder who survives and one who doesn't. Let's start with the one that almost nobody talks about. Lesson 1. You don't know yourself as well as you think you do. Before Marcus wrote one word about strategy or leadership, he wrote this: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Simple line. Most people read it, nod, and move on. Here's what they miss. Marcus wasn't writing that as advice for someone else. He was writing it as a correction for himself. Because even as emperor, even with all that power, he kept catching himself reacting to things he couldn't control, getting irritated at incompetent advisors, anxious about battles he hadn't fought yet, angry at the slow pace of change in his empire. He was human, that's the point. Most founders go into their first business with an inflated picture of who they are under pressure. They've read the books, they've studied the case studies, they've watched the interviews. They think they know how they'll respond when a deal falls through at midnight, when a co-founder turns on them, when the account hits zero. They don't. You don't know who you are until the business starts testing you. And it will test you in ways you never anticipated. Not in the dramatic, cinematic ways you imagined, but in the quiet, grinding, invisible ways that wear you down before you even notice it's happening. Marcus's habit of journaling wasn't therapy, it was intelligence gathering about himself. He was studying his own patterns the same way a general studies enemy terrain. Before you launch, before you take funding, before you hire your first person, sit down and actually map your weaknesses. Not the polished, I work too hard weakness you'd give in a job interview. The real ones. The patterns that show up when you're tired or scared or backed into a corner. Are you impulsive when you feel disrespected? Do you go quiet when things get hard instead of asking for help? Do you overcommit when someone flatters you? Do you avoid confrontation until small problems become catastrophic ones? A founder who knows these things about himself builds systems around them. He hires people to compensate for them. He catches himself mid-pattern before the pattern costs him 6 figures or a key relationship. A founder who doesn't know them gets blindsided repeatedly by the same version of himself wearing different circumstances. Lesson 2. The business will mirror your inner state. There's a line from Marcus that most people treat as motivational poster material. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Founders usually interpret this as obstacles are opportunities. Push through resistance. Stay positive. That's not wrong, but it's the surface reading. The deeper reading is this. How you respond to resistance in your business is a direct reflection of your internal architecture. If you panic when cash flow gets tight, that panic isn't coming from your bank account, it's coming from something inside you that hasn't been addressed. If you freeze when a big client threatens to leave, that freeze has roots that go back further than this client, further than this business. The business will show you yourself, constantly, mercilessly. Marcus governed an empire and still came home to his journal to write about the moments he lost his composure, said something out of anger, avoided a difficult conversation. He didn't hide from these moments. He studied them. Early-stage founders spend enormous energy on pitch decks, growth hacks, and networking events. Almost none of them spend equivalent energy understanding why they make the decisions they make, why they avoid certain calls, why they say yes when they should say no, why they hire fast and fire slow. Your business is a living, breathing reflection of your psychology. The bottlenecks in your company almost always trace back to a bottleneck in you. This isn't comfortable. It's not supposed to be. A founder who accepts this, who treats every operational problem as a clue about himself, grows in ways that fix multiple problems at once. A founder who refuses to look in that direction will keep solving the same problems with different names, wondering why the same issues keep showing up in different employees, different clients, different partnerships. The most powerful due diligence you can do before starting a business isn't market research. It's this. Lesson 3. Clarity is a competitive advantage. Seneca wrote something that gets sharper the longer you think about it. If a man knows not which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Founders love momentum. Movement feels like progress. A full calendar feels like productivity. A crowded roadmap feels like ambition. Most of it is noise. Successful businesses aren't built by people who did more. They're built by people who were brutally, almost uncomfortably clear about what they were doing and why. About who they served and who they didn't. About what they would build and what they would refuse to build, no matter how good the revenue looked. Clarity isn't inspiration. It doesn't arrive in a moment of motivation. It comes from the hard, slow work of asking uncomfortable questions and sitting with the silence long enough to hear the honest answers. What problem are you actually solving? Not the problem you're pitching, the problem you're actually solving. For who, specifically? Not small business owners or people who want to be healthier. Specifically, a person, a situation, a moment in someone's day where your product either earns its place or it doesn't. Marcus ran daily briefings with military commanders, but before anyone spoke, he required clarity on 3 things. What's the situation? What are the options? What's the recommendation? Not background, not context, not the history of how they got here. 3 things. That discipline cut through hours of noise and got to the decision. You need the same discipline in your business. Strip away everything that feels productive but isn't. What are the 3 decisions that actually move this forward this week? What's the one conversation you've been avoiding that's creating more drag than any competitor ever could? Clarity isn't the starting point. For most founders, it's something you have to earn, repeatedly, by being willing to cut through your own comfortable assumptions and face what's actually true. Most founders hit their first real wall around month 6 or month 18. Not a funding wall, not a product wall, a personal wall. The version of themselves they built the business on suddenly stops being enough. The confidence that got them through the early days starts feeling thin. The decisions that used to come easily now sit heavy. And in that moment, that specific moment, everything Marcus Aurelius ever wrote stops being philosophy and starts feeling like someone wrote it specifically for you, sitting exactly where you're sitting right now. If you're there, stay with me. If you haven't hit it yet, you will. And what comes next might be the thing that saves you when you do. Lesson 4. Ego is the leak you can't see. There's a particular kind of founder failure that doesn't look like failure from the outside. The company is growing, the press is good, the team is expanding, and underneath all of it, something is quietly rotting. Usually, it's ego. Marcus wrote to himself, and remember, he was writing this as the most powerful man alive. How much more harmful are the consequences of anger and grief than the circumstances that aroused them? He wasn't talking about tantrums. He was talking about the subtle, corrosive way that a leader's need to be right, to be respected, to be seen as the smartest person in the room, starts making worse and worse decisions while surrounded by people too afraid to say so. Ego doesn't announce itself. It shows up disguised as confidence when a customer tells you the product isn't working right and you explain why they're using it wrong. It shows up disguised as vision when your team raises concerns about a direction and you override them because you've been right before. It shows up disguised as standards when you can't delegate because nobody else will do it exactly how you would. The most dangerous version of ego in a founder isn't arrogance, it's certainty. The deep, settled feeling that you understand this market, this customer, this moment better than the evidence is currently suggesting. Marcus kept his journal precisely because he didn't trust his own certainty. He wrote out his thoughts not to confirm them, but to interrogate them. He actively sought the friction of examining what he believed, because he understood that a man who stops questioning himself stops learning. And a man who stops learning starts losing ground long before the numbers reflect it. Build a practice of interrogating your own certainty, not with fake humility, not with performative self-doubt, but with the honest question, what would have to be true for me to be wrong about this? Ask that question about your pricing, your positioning, the person you just hired, the partner you're about to sign, the direction you're so excited about you stopped listening to pushback 2 weeks ago. The founders who last aren't the ones who were always right. They're the ones who were wrong quickly, openly, and without it costing them their identity. Lesson 5. The people you build with are the business. Epictetus was born a slave. He had no property, no rights, no control over almost any condition of his life. And he became one of the most studied philosophers in human history, specifically because of what he understood about human nature under pressure. He said this, "Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life." Founders usually apply this to circumstances, markets shifting, plans falling apart, timing being off. That's valid. But the place where this Stoic lesson for entrepreneurs cuts deepest is in people. You will hire the wrong person. Not because you're careless, but because people are genuinely hard to read before real pressure arrives. You will have a co-founder relationship that starts as the best professional relationship of your life and ends with lawyers involved. You will trust someone in your inner circle who is quietly working against what you're building for reasons that probably started small and compounded slowly. These things happen. They happen to founders who are brilliant, careful, and experienced. They happen to Marcus. He dealt with betrayal at the highest levels of Roman government from people he had elevated and protected. What separates the founders who survive these moments from the ones who don't is this: the ability to see people clearly without needing them to be something they're not. When you hire, you're not just adding capability, you're adding psychology to a system that already has your psychology in it. Two people's blind spots can compound each other catastrophically, or two people's strengths can create something neither could build alone. Look at how a person handles being wrong in small moments. Look at how they talk about people who aren't in the room. Look at what they do when no one is watching and there's no immediate reward for doing the right thing. Those small signals are more reliable than any interview, any reference check, any impressive background. The business you build is ultimately the people you choose to build it with. Marcus knew this. He spent enormous attention selecting and developing his commanders because he understood that his strategy was only as strong as the humans executing it. Your team isn't your resource, they are your reality. Lesson 6. Comfort is the slow enemy. There's a specific kind of success that destroys more businesses than failure ever has. It's the success that's just good enough to stop the hunger, but not good enough to build something that lasts. The client base that pays the bills, the routine that feels productive, the revenue plateau that looks respectable from the outside. Marcus warned himself against this constantly. He practiced voluntary discomfort, reminding himself of what it felt like to have less, to struggle, to need. Not as punishment, as calibration. He wrote, "Confine yourself to the present," but part of that presence was the honest acknowledgement of where he actually stood, not the comfortable story he could tell himself about it. Most founders hit a level of stability and unconsciously start managing it rather than building on it. The decisions get safer, the risks get smaller. The vision that was once bold starts getting trimmed down to fit whatever the current reality will comfortably support. This isn't laziness, it's human. The nervous system registers stability as success and starts protecting it. But here's what actually happens in that phase. While you're protecting the ground you've taken, the market keeps moving. Your best people, the ones with the most options, start sensing the ceiling and quietly start looking. The customer's needs evolve and your product doesn't. And one day, what felt like a stable business turns out to have been a slow decline that you didn't notice because each individual month looked fine. Stoicism doesn't ask you to be reckless. It asks you to be honest. Be honest about whether you're building or just maintaining. Be honest about whether your current choices are driven by genuine strategy or quiet comfort. Be honest about the conversation you keep not having, the pivot you keep not making, the hard decision you keep scheduling for next quarter. Discomfort isn't a sign that something is wrong. Sometimes it's the clearest sign that something is finally right. Lesson 7. How you lose matters as much as whether you win. This one is going to land differently depending on where you are in your journey. Marcus Aurelius faced military campaigns he didn't win cleanly. He dealt with plagues that took lives he couldn't save. He made decisions with incomplete information that cost people dearly. He wrote about those moments with an honesty that's almost uncomfortable to read because he didn't soften them or reframe them into lessons too quickly. He sat with the weight of them first. Founders are trained by startup culture to reframe failure fast. Fail forward. Every setback is a setup. Pivot, learn, iterate. And there's truth in all of that. But something gets lost when you reframe too quickly. You skip the honest accounting. You miss the actual reason things went wrong because you were too fast to extract the lesson and move on. You don't let the experience fully land, so it doesn't fully teach. There will be things you try that don't work, products that don't find their market, partnerships that cost more than they return, hires that set you back 6 months, bets you made on timing that was off by a year in either direction. How you handle those moments, how you communicate them to your team, how you account for them privately, how you carry them without either denying them or drowning in them, defines the culture of your company more than any values document ever will. Your team watches what you do when things go wrong, not what you say, what you do. If you pretend the failure didn't happen or minimize it to protect optics, they learn to hide problems from you. If you collapse under it and make the whole company feel the weight of your distress, they learn that bringing you bad news is dangerous. If you account for it honestly, own your part in it specifically, and move forward with the same steadiness you brought to the good days, they learn that this company can handle reality. That's the culture that survives long enough to build something real. There's a moment every founder eventually reaches. Not the launch, not the first customer, not even the first real crisis. It's quieter than all of those. It usually happens alone, late, when the noise of the day has finally settled. And in that quiet, a question surfaces that you can't answer with a pitch deck or a growth chart or another conversation with your advisor. Is this actually working? And if it is it worth what it's costing? Marcus sat with questions like that his entire reign. The most powerful man in the world, asking himself in private whether he was doing it right, whether the cost was justified, whether the person he was becoming through all of this was someone he could respect. That question isn't weakness. It's the thing that kept him honest when everything around him would have supported a comfortable lie. The last two Stoic lessons for entrepreneurs are for that moment, for when the scoreboard isn't enough anymore and you need something deeper to stand on. Lesson 8. Patience is not passive, it's a weapon. Every founder has a timeline in their head, where the business should be by month 12, by year 2, by the time they're 35. And almost without exception, reality doesn't match that timeline. The market moves differently. The product takes longer. The right customers arrive 18 months after you expected them. The breakthrough you worked toward for 2 years shows up looking nothing like what you imagined. Most founders interpret this gap between the expected timeline and reality as evidence that something is wrong. They start making moves out of that anxiety, pivoting before the first strategy had time to prove itself, chasing new opportunities because waiting on the current one feels like falling behind, abandoning things at exactly the moment they were about to compound. Marcus had a different relationship with time. He governed through a plague that lasted years. He fought campaigns that stretched across decades. He made decisions whose consequences he knew he might not live to see. And through all of it, he wrote about the importance of doing the right work now, fully, without making its value dependent on how quickly the results appeared. He wrote, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." That's not a patience that sits and waits. That's a patience that works, consistently, deliberately, without needing external confirmation every 90 days to keep going. The businesses that outlast the hype cycles, the funding winters, the market corrections, they almost always have a founder at the center who learned to hold a long view without losing precision in the short term. Who could do today's work with full attention without being constantly pulled into anxiety about whether today's work would be enough? Your timeline is probably wrong, not because you're a bad planner, but because building something real takes longer than the culture around startups wants to admit. The gap between your expected timeline and your actual one isn't a problem to solve, it's a reality to operate within. The founders who understand this stop spending energy fighting the gap and start spending it widening their lead, 1 week at a time, with the kind of quiet consistency that doesn't make good content but builds genuinely good companies. Patience in this sense isn't about waiting, it's about not letting urgency talk you into abandoning what's actually working just because it isn't working fast enough. Lesson 9. The business is not the point, you are. This is the one most founders aren't ready to hear early. Some aren't ready to hear it ever. But it might be the most important thing Marcus ever understood about leadership, about building, about why any of this matters in the first place. He wrote, near the end of his journals, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Not a good emperor, not a good strategist, a good man." The business is a vehicle. It's a real, demanding, consequential vehicle, but it's still a vehicle. It's not the destination. And one of the most common and least discussed tragedies in the startup world is the founder who builds exactly what they set out to build and arrives at success to find that they don't recognize themselves anymore. They optimized the company and lost the plot on themselves. The hours that were supposed to be temporary became permanent. The relationships they were going to invest in after things settled never got the investment because things never settled. The health they were going to prioritize next quarter got deprioritized for 12 quarters in a row. The values they started with got quietly negotiated away, one reasonable compromise at a time, until the business they built reflects almost nothing of who they actually wanted to be. Marcus watched this happen to people around him his entire life. Men who climbed to positions of enormous influence and became smaller in the process. Who had more power and less integrity, more visibility and less self-awareness. He refused to let that happen to himself. Not always successfully. He wrote about his failures too, but the refusal was constant. As you build, you will face moments where the business asks you to become someone you don't want to be. Sometimes it'll be obvious. A deal that requires you to be dishonest. A partnership that requires you to look away from something wrong. But more often, it'll be subtle. It'll be 100 small decisions that each seem reasonable in isolation, each justified by circumstance, each slowly bending who you are toward who the business needs you to be. Watch those moments. Take them seriously, because the business you build will eventually reflect the person you became while building it. If you cut corners privately, that eventually shows up in product quality. If you treat people as tools when stakes are high, that eventually defines your culture, whether you intended it to or not. If you stop telling yourself the truth about how things are going, that blind spot costs you in decisions you don't even realize are being made in the dark. The best founders aren't the ones who sacrificed everything for the business. They're the ones who built the business without sacrificing what made them worth following in the first place. That's what Marcus did. Imperfectly, honestly, consistently. He governed an empire without losing himself in it. Not because it was easy, his journals make clear it wasn't, but because he kept asking the question, who am I becoming through this? Ask that question regularly, not as a distraction from building, but as part of it, because the answer shapes every decision you make, every culture you create, every person who decides to follow what you're building. 9 lessons, thousands of years of testing. None of them are quick fixes. None of them work if you treat them as content to consume and move on from. They work the way Marcus used them, as a daily practice of honest self-examination in service of better action. You started reading this as a founder looking for an edge. The edge Marcus is pointing to has nothing to do with tactics. It has everything to do with the kind of person who shows up to build day after day when the results aren't in yet and the pressure is highest and the easier path is always visible. That person, that specific quality of person, is what every lesson here is trying to build. Start there. Build from there. Everything else follows. If this hit the way it was supposed to hit, share it with one founder who needs it right now. Not a group message, one specific person, someone in the middle of the hard stretch who could use something real to hold on to. And if you want more of this, Stoic wisdom built specifically for people who are actually building something, Stoic Founder is where we do this work. Subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came from, and none of it is going to waste your time.